They called me dead weight, so I gave them the mortgage bill and moved to Florida. I was folding towels in the kitchen when I heard them. Their voices were hushed, but I'd lived long enough to know when people were trying not to be heard. You need to say something, Clara whispered, her tone tight with impatience. Your mother can't live with us forever. She's not helping. She just takes up space. To which Michael mumbled, she raised you, but Clara snapped. That's not the point, we've got bills, stress, and she just sits there all day. She's dead weight. I froze, the towel in my hand slipped onto the counter. Dead weight. I heard you, I said softly, stepping into the doorway. Clara flinched. Michael turned, eyes wide. Mom, that's not what she meant, he stammered. It is, I said. You just didn't think I'd be listening. That night at dinner, my hand trembled due to arthritis and I spilled a bowl of soup. Seriously? Clara hissed, then slapped my hand away hard and slapped my face. Michael just stood there and looked away, and it was in that moment I realized he wouldn't defend me. Then my youngest daughter, and whom I hadn't seen in over a year since she went to sign her divorce papers, appeared in the doorway, saw my red cheek, the spilled soup, and without hesitation she slapped Clara, echoing, You touch my mother again and I will break both your hands. Michael jumped up in anger but turned slowly. You let your wife hit Mom and said nothing. You let her call Mom a burden and just stood there like a coward. To which Michael snapped back, calling Ann a divorced parasite who ran back to her mother the second life got hard. Calling both of us useless. I stepped between them. Enough, I said, looking at Ann. You're not useless. And then I turned to Michael. And you're not my son anymore. I walked away very much alive and done, recalling how I had sold my own small brick home, bought with every graveyard shift, to wire them the down payment for their house, never asking to be on the deed, only wanting to be near my grandchildren, moving into their windowless guest room between the laundry and the garage. I helped more than they'd ever admit, watching the kids every weekday, cooking, washing, never asking for a cent, until I noticed a final notice mortgage envelope. Michael brushed it off, but I paid it quietly and set up a monthly payment to cover half the mortgage for 3 years without telling them, because he was my son. Yet Clara's contempt grew, rolling her eyes, correcting me sharply, suggesting they turn my guest room into a playroom for more space, and telling me, might be nice if you started picking up your own groceries. I mean, you do eat a lot of yogurt. While Michael always looked away. One evening I burned the rice and Clara laughed. Well, I guess you really are getting old. I sat down on the back steps and realized that even though I stayed because mothers stay, the moment Clara slapped my face and Michael didn't move, my grief turned into resolve to do something I never thought I had the strength for. I called the bank on a Tuesday morning, not dramatically but quietly, confirming I was the payee on the mortgage and simply stating, no, I said I'd like to stop today, and requesting that the remaining balance, all future communications, and every financial document be redirected to the legal homeowners, Michael and Clara Harper. I hung up, printed the bank's confirmation letter, folded it neatly with the final receipt, and placed the envelope beside the salt shaker on the dinner table that afternoon. When they arrived home, I greeted them like nothing had changed, and when the plates were nearly empty, I reached for the envelope and placed it between them, telling Clara, that is the last mortgage payment I will ever make, explaining, I called the bank this morning, told them to send everything to the legal homeowners, you too. From now on, all responsibility is yours. And when Michael finally looked up from his plate, I turned to Clara and stated, you said I was dead weight. And now I'm removing the weight. Detailing how I had paid for the house for 3 years, cooked their meals, raised their children, and stayed quiet while they turned cold. I lifted my small suitcase from beside my chair and set it upright, declaring, but now the givers are done giving. And to Clara's rising voice, you can't just leave. What about the kids? You can't just drop this on us, I replied. I can and I am. Michael looked like a boy again, asking where I would go, and I smiled. Where I'm not dead weight. I was gone in the morning, leaving the house key on the counter with no note, just the click of the door and the long quiet walk toward freedom, rolling my little suitcase to the bus stop at 5:40 a.m., watching the city shrink as I rode toward Florida and my daughter, and I finally arrived in Florida, stepping off the bus into sunlight and cicadas, and found Ann in a small apartment. When she opened the door, her breath caught, she looked thinner, tired, and without her wedding ring, but she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me, holding me for what felt like hours, two women who had survived houses where love had conditions and silence was safer than truth, and slowly started to heal, sharing how her husband called her garbage, and checked her phone every night, but I firmly told her, he's wrong. He was always wrong. And when her tears dried, I told her, "If you can't leave yet, I'll take you. I'll carry you out myself if I have to." We spent the next few weeks untangling her life, and one Sunday afternoon, she stood in the doorway holding a thick envelope with trembling hands. "Divorce papers," she said. I signed them. I hugged her, saying, "We saved each other because in her freedom I found mine too." We found a small apartment above a seafood market on the edge of town, with a chipped railing and temperamental plumbing, but the windows caught the sunrise like they were built to remember beauty, and we moved in with only what we needed, our days settling into a rhythm wherein sold handmade jewelry and I started baking, taking local orders, calling it mother and daughter goods, not making much but not needing much. I wrote in my journal every morning, not to remember, but to release the disappointment and heartbreak, while I began to paint again. We didn't talk about Michael or Clara or the house I'd left behind. One night I watched and sleeping peacefully on the sofa with a faint smile, the kind of sleep that only comes when you finally feel safe, and I knew I had done the right thing, choosing to live as a woman who still had chapters left to write, whispering, "Thank you," to the part of me that refused to be erased, finding peace with no weight on my chest. Months later, the phone rang, a familiar area code, and I picked it up to hear my granddaughter Lily whisper that Michael and Clara were scared because the bank sent a letter about foreclosure. Then Michael got on the phone, his voice shaky, saying, "I'm sorry, and I need help. They're going to take the house," begging, "Please come back," to which I asked, "Do you remember the day Clara called me dead weight? Do you remember what you did?" Nothing, and reminding him, "Now months later, you remember I exist because the bank does too." And when he sobbed, I closed my eyes and firmly stated the sentence I'd been saving. "I was a burden to you then. But I'm not anymore. I used to carry that house. Now I carry myself." I told him to tell the kids their grandmother was doing just fine and then hung up, finding only peace. And I walk barefoot on the beach, finding a rhythm that feels like forgiveness for ourselves, and I plant herbs, send handwritten recipes, and sleep without worry. Last week I received a letter from Lily with a stamp and a little heart, saying, "I hope you are happy. I miss you. I miss the smell of your cookies. I miss your hugs." I told Mommy and Daddy that. Mommy cried. Daddy went outside. I cried later that night, not out of sorrow, but release for everything I had kept inside. But I didn't regret leaving. I wrote back to Lily, telling her about the beach, the seagulls, the basil and lavender, but not the house or her parents, because that wasn't her burden to carry. I sealed the envelope with a pressed violet, knowing that for years I had convinced myself that being needed was the same as being loved. But it's not. Love doesn't leave bruises. It doesn't call you dead weight in the room you paid for. Love stays. Love speaks. Love sees. Now I walk under the sun with my daughter beside me, loud in our living, in our healing. She sells little jars of sand and poems, and I plant rosemary for protection, though I tell her she doesn't need it anymore because she has herself and me. I take up space joyfully, deliberately, my laughter fills the kitchen. My memories matter because I matter. I am not a burden. I never was. And if someone says otherwise, that's their weight to carry, not mine. We didn't just survive, we lived, taking road trips, collecting experiences, not apologies, writing in our journals about who we had become. And the past has a way of chasing you. As one humid afternoon Michael left an urgent voicemail saying, "Clara and I, we made some mistakes, gambling, some debts. We're being evicted. It's all falling apart. We don't know where to go." But and quietly blocked the number, and I did the same, not with rage or glee, but with a shared stillness that spoke louder than shouting, knowing they were drowning in the weight of their own making, while we had learned to swim without them. Forgiveness isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a quiet morning with tea in hand, where you finally breathe without waiting to be heard again. And we forgave, not because they deserved it, but because we deserved peace. We didn't return because there was nothing left to fix, and no one left to apologize to. I close the story with a final address to the audience. You are not too much. You are not dead weight. You are a library of love and labor, and if they've forgotten that, let them, because when a woman like you walks out of a room, really walks, she takes the warmth with her. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone your old age, and you certainly don't owe anyone your forgiveness if they haven't earned it, advising them to speak their truth, to write boundaries that hold, and to let their leaving be the lesson, because the echo of your footsteps walking away will be louder than anything you could have screamed.